Live. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Let me pull out the chat, actually. Pull out the chat so I can stick that on the screen if I need to. Open frame and new window. That's what I'll do. All right, so we did something unprecedented last week, and I can't tell you how excited I am about it. I was a little afraid. I was I was a little afraid that there would be like either uncomfortable silences or I don't know, if somebody would do something crazy. I don't know. But so I got to watch last week as a spectator. I had to watch it later. I only watched like a couple minutes live, and because I had other things going on. Had to travel back and forth to Alabama for the sake of my kiddos. But to see what happened last week with you guys, it was pretty amazing. I got to watch totally as a spectator, watching you guys interact, talk back and forth, and come up with ideas. And it's pretty interesting because there's a couple of times when I wanted to jump into game A. For example, when the issue of meekness came up, I wanted to jump in and give the standard answer. Meekness is strength under control, right? But then I realized that I remembered that the reason we're doing this isn't because of the answer, it's because of the process. It's like taking the time to think about something is part of the process, and that's what the point is. So many good points were brought up, like stuff about music, Sumerian. I could visualize that stuff, and how like the point of a song is not to get to the end as fast as you can. It's not to complete the task. It's to enjoy the song. Kind of like the point of a dance or the point of music. If the point of getting to the end of the song was the point, then the fastest musicians would be the best musicians, and the fastest dancers would be the best dancers. But that's not the point of music. The point of music is to enjoy the music, to experience it, and it's intended to play out. And I think that is kind of what we are doing here. Is when we come here, it's not that we're averse to answers, but we're not here for answers. We're here for this experience and for the transformational affordances that it has for us and for each other, and that we can bring to other people. The stuff about the edifice was very thought-provoking. Now, we brought that up multiple times on the channel, but not like Roberta did, where it was not just an edifice, not just a building, but a very imposing building, a very intense building. I forget what the words are, but a very significant building. And so that tied me into thinking into whose house we are if, whose house we are if. A lot of people tie that into salvation. And it's not, I don't think it's a salvation passage. I think it's an edification passage. When the house of the Lord would be a big ornate edifice, and you can be transformed so that you can be a part of that monumental structure or not. But that has to do, in my opinion, with the transformation process. And the word sanctification will do, but I think that has bad branding. It's too religious. Joe says he's trying to troubleshoot. Joseph Carter is trying to troubleshoot his audio. Something else that stuck out to me. I'm just trying to review a couple of things that stuck out to me when Josh said something about every time somebody spoke. I can't remember it all off the top of my head, but the whole interaction was great. When Josh said that it sounds like Paul is using procedural things to achieve a certain perspective, or to point out a certain perspective. I don't know if you remember saying that, Josh, but I got this that sounds so succinctly captures what I've been trying to think but couldn't say. Where all you know those pieces of art that if you look at them from one angle, it looks like visual gibberish, but if you get to a certain angle, then it all comes together and you see the drawing. Something like that, to where there's all these different angles that Paul is trying to give all these different angles toward a perspective, but they're procedural angles. And it made me think of how the four kinds of knowing are cascaded within one another. And you can, if you know how they work, you can use one layer of knowing to achieve another one. I thought that was pretty brilliant. And so Paul spends a lot of his time in chapters 2 and 3. He has this whole big prayer praying that they come to this big understanding. Well, if the thing that he wanted them to get to was something that he could just come out and say, then he would just come out and say it. So there's something that he wants them to perceive and know that he cannot just come out and say. And I think if you read the book from that premise, you start to, one of the observation questions you're going to ask is like, what is this pointing at? It's not just what it says, but it's also pointing at something. What is that? What is the paint by numbers big mosaic here that Paul is putting together that I'm only getting a little piece of here? What does that look like? Somebody said, hush, you guys are talking too loud. I can't hear them talk. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if he's joking or not. So anyway, I don't know if it's appropriate. I don't want to sound like I'm patronizing you guys, but I'm so proud. I was so happy with how it turned out. And it was a huge honor to me that you guys would show up and do this in my absence last week, and that you guys would, comport yourself admirably and that it would go well. I'm almost thinking that it might go better that way. It went pretty well. Anybody have any comments on that kind of stuff on last week or anything like that before we charge on?
Nick did a great job. Appreciate that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, what did you mean by it might go better that way? You're not talking about leaving us, are you?
No, not leaving. But what I'm thinking is having, and I don't know if it would be Wednesday nights, but I'm thinking of having some kind of regular thing where somebody else hosts or somebody else guides the discussion, like on a regular basis. And I would participate in it, but something like that, because I think that's part of what affords transformation is having that role, wearing that hat every now and then is eye-opening and insightful, helpful. Wow. Anybody else got any comments right now? Yeah, Ruth.
I have a question, but it's about the whole chapter in general.
Yeah.
And I've sort of pondered it for a few weeks. I don't know the answer, but I wonder if you hit on it to do with the flow. But if chapter 3, it ends with, praying for the Ephesians here, and then it goes to keeping the unity of the Spirit. It just seems odd to me that the new man, like 17 to the end, wouldn't come next and then finish off with the gifts of Christ, about till you this and growing into that and the gifts. Like, I don't know. I just wondered, there's obviously a reason, but the crescendo to me, I'm wondering, like 1 to 6, and then 17 to the end, and then finish up with. It's just a question.
Did you freeze a second to finish up with what? I thought I lost you for a second, Ruth.
I would have finished up with the 7, like till we grow into the stature, till we all come to unity of the faith. I would have done all the preaching at them for the way they're acting together, and then ended up with 7 to 15.
I'm trying to go back and read those on the fly here. Unity of spirit and the bond of peace. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. So they say that a good pedagogical method is to give a summary of what you're going to say, and then say what you're going to say, and then end with a summary of what you're going to say. And the way Paul employs introductory or conclusional types of things, he seems to be the kind of person that leads with the big idea and then unravels it. And whether I don't know if I could speak to the appropriateness of that, but it seems to be what's going on. Like, here's the big thing. Now let me unravel it for you.
Kind of feels like Ruth is offering her critique of Paul's like really confusing
Writing
writing style. Yeah,
We need to come out with the Ruth standard version, the RSV. No, I'm kidding.
It'd be more like the ruthless one.
Let's rebrand the RSV.
my heart is, this is kind of a weird moment for me because my heart is beating right now because I did feel like she was critiquing Paul, and it's like I know, but I want to stay in this moment here for a second because I feel like Paul gets a reprieve all the time for all of his confusing stuff because it's scripture. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to stay here for a second.
Well, I'm trying to go forward in the text and see if there's some kind of wrap it up kind of thing to this kind of idea, but it seems to keep delineating out. Like he finishes talking to the assembly in chapter 5 verse 20, and then he starts talking about husbands and wives, and then 6 is children, and then we get into the famous in chapter 6 we get into this famous spiritual battle passage, and then he starts giving personal information after that about his affairs and who he's sending where and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Fast forward now. I'm done. I wasn't critiquing the inspired word of God. No.
I have a comment.
yeah.
So it's, to me, I think this is an issue of knowing or not knowing the context of the audience.
Yeah, yeah.
And without being like in like a robotic computer state where you're just inputting all this data from the current events and the specific issues that he's dealing with that in that book, it's like you're never going to really know the flow. And I don't know if we're supposed to understand like every nook and cranny of how that was, I mean, this is a weird thought, but imagine if you had like an AI computer and you just kept feeding it data by date, like until it knew as much as it could possibly know. And then you throw this book, all these words in this book through the computer and see what it thinks it means. I think there's a spiritual dynamic to reading the word, and revelation from the Holy Spirit is pivotal. You just can't work without the spiritual dynamic.
So I think there's a change that occurs when we engage the text as a group like this. There's a change that has occurred in me, having done this with you guys over the past year. And I would presume that the same is true with most of you. There's a change. So whether or not there's a particular answer, I don't know, but is the process bringing forth fruit in me I think that's, so here, let me say it another way. Something called my attention to the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams in it. I think I saw it, I think I heard it in one of the YouTube videos that Nick sent me. And this movie got mentioned, so I went and watched the trailer, and there's a quotation in the movie where Robin Williams says, "It's not about understanding, it's about not giving up." It's interesting because the point, I don't know if that was the exact quote that the people who were talking about this, if they were making that point, but they were making the point, the way we've said it in the past is the scripture is a point of interface with the numinous, with the sacred infinite, that is intended for us to interface with for the sake of changing us. Whether or not everything gets figured out isn't the point. Whether or not you change so that you live better is the point, regardless of what you think as a result. And interfacing with the text, I think, has that result. So does that make sense? So I think it's interesting because I think struggling, it's this weird conundrum. It's weird, not a catch-22 thing, but this weird ironic thing where struggling with the text for the sake of trying to figure it out is what changes you, but having it figured out is not what changes you. Something like that. And I think there's a real danger in getting like a seminary degree with your name on it and having the delusion that you have it figured out. Oh, I took a class on the book of Ephesians. I have a master's degree. I have a master's of divinity, and I understand the book of Ephesians. I am what you might call an expert in this area. I mean, to think that of oneself, regardless of how much you've looked at it, is the most unhelpful way to think of things. And it's, no matter how much you think you know what it's talking about, the constant engagement with it is what affords the transformation and what needs to continually be pursued.
Kevin.
James, I think, and then Nick, and then Joe.
When you were talking, you reminded me of Job. Is that not the story of Job and like what he went through and he wanted to know? And I'm not sure if he even found out in the very end, but at one point God said, something like, stand up like a man and answer my question.
Gird thyself like a man and answer me if thou canst.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that out. That you reminded me of Job.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. What were you going to say, Nick?
I kind of wanted to like not put Ruth on the hook again, but just try to try to extract out something that is actually, in my opinion, very valuable. That like she was able to sort of disenchant that like seminary trained kind of hubris in the approach to chapter 4 by allowing herself to be reminded that this is a letter that was written to a group of people by a radical man in the axial age. And to just step back for a second and actually allow yourself to ask questions of the text, like, well, why did he do it in this order? It seems very unintuitive to me. It's like using a Microsoft
interface. Acts 17:20, for thou bringest certain strange things into our ears. We would know, therefore, what these things mean. Paul being a radical and all. Yeah. Right.
It's like reading Paul is like using, Windows and instead of Mac or something. It's like not user friendly.
I gotta throw up.
Yeah, I feel like. So yeah, I just wanted to see if I could pull that out and put it out on the table for everybody as like a, you know, like if you're not a believer, that like what Ruth said is probably a legitimate question that a non-believer would ask of the text, you know, and it's, you know, that kind of brings it to Josh's point where it's like, well, if you're not a believer, then you're not going to get certain things out of the text because you're not approaching it with faith in this sense, you know, but I do think that there is a value in trying to allow someone to feel morally comfortable enough to ask disenchanting questions about the text, about the Bible. So because of what it might reveal about, you know, your actual transformative experience from a man to a man kind of thing, you know, in something about James's comments about Job, and that Job had to actually experience something instead of understand it, kind of in some way ties into what I'm trying to say.
Yes. So oh my goodness, I just lost what I was trying to say now. I was listening to the last, what did you say like 2 sentences ago? 3 sentences ago.
I think it was like there's a healthiness in being able to disenchant the text and not be morally indignant for doing so.
Right. So I think that is a good exercise in perspectival awareness and perspectival knowing, to be able to look at it from an external perspective. And also, it also indicates, to be able to ask that question indicates that there is some kind of grasp of the overall theme of what the book is trying to say. So too often we look at the little proof text and we're trying to prove doctrines and not prove doctrines. But when somebody can look at the text and say, well, you know, this set of verses, it seems like maybe it would make more sense to put them at the end of the chapter rather than the beginning. That to me shows that somebody's looking at the text to try to get what the author is trying to say, rather than to try to map it to a set of dogmas, which is good, I think, you know. And also, if you're ever engaged in preaching or teaching, it is your job to synthesize what this guy is trying to say and try to rehash it out to folks. You know, so I mean, it makes sense to be able to put it in your own words, and to maybe if you do your sermon outline or your lesson outline, you would do it backwards. Joe Carter, can you hear us yet?
Yeah, finally. Sorry, brother.
Hey man, it's good to see you again. But long time.
Oh man, I really appreciate what y'all been doing. I know I can't join y'all most Wednesdays for this. I actually teach at my church, but I really appreciate what y'all have been doing, and I think I've gotten more insight out of this group than really just about anywhere else. So I do think there's something special here. I appreciate y'all letting me come in. Sorry for the audio issues earlier.
No, this is great. It's great to see you here. Good to see you again. I mean, I was telling these guys when you were coming in and out that we used to know each other back in Tennessee, and it's good to connect with somebody that I know in person as well.
Yeah, many moons ago, right?
Many moons ago. It's been a minute. It's been you know, I won't go there anyway. I'm gonna say at least a wife ago. Joe Non-Carter has his hand up. That's funny. We have like 3 Joes who come here, and one of them is a Joe C, and now we have a Joe Carter. You know. All right, Joe Non-Carter.
Yeah, the Joes are banding together. And watch out. Anyway, but yeah, I was thinking about what you said about being willing to learn, and as opposed to, oh, I have a degree now, or I'm, you know, I know everything for whatever reason, and basically bringing to a screeching halt learning anything new.
Yep.
And
Plateau.
And I know I may have mentioned this before, but I may not have. But Albert Einstein was at his birthday party. I think he was 70. And there was some young, I think, person there about 20 who just asked Einstein, "Oh, and what do you do?" You know, apparently she did not know who he was. And his answer really stands out to me because he said, well, he did not say I'm the most famous scientist in the world or the greatest scientist in the world or lots of things. He said, I study physics, you know, and
Yeah.
that seems a bit humble. And also if he's really studying, he's learning, you know, he's kind of open-minded and not doing what you were talking about, somebody thinking, oh, I know everything and that's it, you know.
Yeah.
And one other scientist,
it reminds me of Anchorman when the guy's like, I'm kind of a big deal when somebody shows up and doesn't know who he is. And it reminds me that Christians, you know, people, you know, I've been asked the question before, you consider yourself a scholar or an expert in the Bible and stuff like that. I'm like, no, I'm a student of the Bible. And I think that's the right approach. Just like Einstein says, you're just constantly a student of life.
Yeah. And he did. And he learned so much. I mean, his Nobel Prize was actually not for what he's really most famous for, relativity. So if you included that, I mean, and everything he did, like he discovered a lot of things that other people are generally given credit for, but he could easily have warranted like half a dozen Nobel Prizes.
Yeah.
And if you have that other attitude, I know everything, it's kind of like turning the key and locking the door to any further increase of your knowledge.
Yeah.
You know,
Stacy just posted, but continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them, indicating that the intent is to continue learning. Yeah. Are you going to say something, James?
Oh yeah, it kind of ties into what Brother Joe and you guys were talking about. Do you guys know who Edward James Olmos is? He's an actor. He's like a famous actor. So it's not going to make sense to you if you don't know who he is, but you can look him up later. So my wife's mom had the chance to meet him through her sister. She introduced her to him, and she said, "Do you know who this is?" And she said, "Scarface." She's like, "No, that's terrible. When you see him, you'll know what I'm talking about." But it wasn't Scarface. It was Edward James Olmos. Anyway, that's it.
So we need to go look him up and then come back and listen to that comment again, I guess. So did y'all talk about, I can't remember because I listened to, okay, I'll just put it this way. The thing that's standing out to me in the text is this phrase of putting away lying. Putting away lying. I don't feel like I can never do that justice. I feel like I feel something, and I feel like there has to be an intentionality to it. When you say put away lying, and I'm looking at Ephesians 4:25, speaking every man the truth with his neighbor. And I remember Ruth emphasized the word neighbor. Why does it say neighbor there as opposed to, somebody else? So putting away lying, if you spend some time trying to refrain from saying things that you don't absolutely know are true, it's amazing how little we have to say.
So
See, I
Jamie,
take exception to that, though. I hear people call other people liars on Facebook all the time. And to me, what do I know? But lying to me is intentional deceit. I think that there is a big difference in being intentionally deceitful and being misinformed, because you can tell somebody something that's not true, but it not be a lie because you think it is the truth.
So, no, that's a really good point. It's a really good point. And so my big thing on this is I think that we lie by negligence, if you will. So if I were to make an epistemically sound statement, and I'm trying to think of an example real quick, like if I'm ill-informed and I pass on that ill information, I should be able to pass it on in a way that also indicates where I heard it from and let the other person know whether or not they trust that source. Is it going to rain tomorrow? Well, the weatherman says, no, it's not going to rain. I'm not going to say it's not going to rain, but I will tell them what the weatherman said, that kind of thing. And so I don't think there's a problem with passing things along that you think are helpful, but to also indicate why you think that's so or where you heard it from as you do it, I think is helpful as well. So Ruth, you threw your hand up for a sec.
No, I think Roberta just answered my question, because my question was, wherefore put away lying and then speak every man truth. So I think, Roberta, maybe you answered it, that the one is the intent and one is, what was the other one you said? I couldn't remember now, Roberta.
By neglect, or
yes, is that what they contrast? Like, why is he restating? And then it's up to verse 15. It's about speaking the truth again, but it's in love that time.
I'm trying to think of the fact that Paul's writing a letter. He's writing in a different language. He's writing it 2,000 years ago. And, I'm thinking of like pollution of the information ecology. I have a note here. I want to read my note. I might share my screen and read my note so you can see what my thoughts were on this back in the day. So the note in the upper right-hand corner, wherefore put away. And so this is me rewording it. The text is over here. Wherefore putting away lying, right? So wherefore put away your participation in the information ecology pollution, right? Put away your willingness to misrepresent the evidence in an effort to gain an advantage in a game theoretic rivalrous scenario. Like I might strategically present information to make my side look better and strategically leave something out or frame it in a certain way, something like that. Put away your willingness to present information in a way where it is spun or framed to give the impression that your view is superior without admitting your bias. Put away your willingness to present all true information in such a way that it can be interpreted to a certain end that benefits you, where a false impression of preponderance of the evidence seems to validate your ideological possession. For example, Calvinists might make a statement like total depravity is true and then list 30 Bible references. And it looks like preponderance of evidence, and it looks like looks like they have truth backing them up. That kind of thing. Put away your willingness and scheming to be less than truthful with the truth, like presenting only the findings that seem to bolster the theory that possesses you. Like you may say all true things, but there may be 6 true things that you strategically left out. Knowing the truth is one thing, being truthful about the truth is another matter entirely. Doing such things deprives other people of their sense-making capacities and faculties, and now they have to use discernment to factor in your bias and attempt to extrapolate the true picture painted by the evidence that you skewed or selectively misrepresented. Hearers have to parse out what advantage your spin is generating for you and calibrate what they are hearing based on that assessment. So y'all ever played the game telephone? You know, everybody whispers around a room, and then by the time it gets to the other side, it's something completely different. And it's funny. It's all fun and games. But then imagine playing the game telephone, but some people who are participating have an incentive. If they can make you think the message was a certain thing, they get something like money or something like that. And you don't know who those people are, but say you're playing telephone with 20 people and you know that 6 of them have an incentive to pass a certain message along regardless of what the original message was, but you don't know who those 6 people are. So when the message, you understand what I'm saying? So if I listen to like John Piper, you know, a broken clock is right twice a day. You can listen to people like that, and you can actually hear good things every once in a while. Every once in a while, you find a $5 bill in a trash can, you know. But that's not where I'd want to go. That's not where I'd go if I wanted to cash a check, you know. I wouldn't go to the trash can. So anyway, I'm going to leave all that. I'm going to leave that right there and let some other thoughts pop out from you guys.
I've got some comments on that.
Yes, indeed.
So Jamie was the one that kind of snowballed that verse, talking about it. He used the analogy of being on autopilot. And the way that he kind of
good analogy too.
So the way that I see that, and he kind of keyed in on the word wherefore in the verse, like something to do with a past experience. The way that I'm trying to flush this out is like kind of like a tree analogy where you've got branches and leaves. And I see these certain things like putting away lying, I see those as procedural attributes that would be like leaves on the branch. And I think we were trying to get to the roots, or get back to the branch and get back to somehow to the tree trunk and the meaning of the whole thing, of the whole idea that Paul's trying to express. So that's when we started talking about being seated in the heavenly places at the beginning of Ephesians chapter 1, the habitation of God, we're the temple of God in chapter 2. And then, so trying to see like putting away lying as a transformational perspectival way of just articulating the new person, the new man. It's kind of hard to really flush it out, but I want to use like a tree analogy to break it down.
Were you going to keep going?
No, I was done. Yeah.
Oh.
It was totally silent. So yeah, it's a little awkward silence there at the end.
I thought you were introducing a new thought that you were about to expound upon.
No, that's it. Just that this is like a perspectival knowing that Paul is sharing. It's not just about some kind of list of procedural attributes, or, you got to put away lying and you got to do this and you got to do that. It's like Jamie called it being an autopilot. We're seated in the heavenly places, and this is the new person. And this is how Paul's expressing that idea that you're no longer just this carnal minded Gentile. You're a new spiritual being seated in the heavenly places. That's it.
I think the autopilot thing is a good analogy.
So in regard to Roberta's point, that is it intentional? I'd always assume the same thing. So I looked it up in the dictionary, and it does say intentional. Then I went to the 1828 just to see. It also mentions intention to deceive, but the second one it lists, it was kind of interesting definition. To exhibit a false representation, to say or do that which deceives another when he has the right to know the truth, or when morality requires a just representation. So that would be kind of interesting for what the translator would have had in mind at that point as well.
Y'all have those moments where you say something, you're like, well, I'm not really sure that's scriptural. I don't know where that is in the Bible. I'm not really sure I should be repeating that. I do that all the time. And then I think, well, of all the years that I said that thing, what if I am intentionally persuading somebody to believe something that I think is true, but happens to be a lie? See what I'm saying? I think that's a problem. I think some epistemic humility about what we think we know can help prevent us from doing that mistake. So at the time, I'm preaching all these doctrines back in the Independent Baptist Church, and I think I'm conveying truth, and I fully have the intent to persuade people to what I'm saying. And then it isn't until years later that I realized that was a bunch of baloney for a variety of reasons. And so then I start backing off and start presenting things that I think a little differently. So to put away lying, even if I thought I was persuading people of the truth, but that's not what I was doing. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think putting away lying has to be a very intentional thing. And there's a rooting out process where you have to realize that a lot of what we pass on and say is not epistemically warranted. And we need to start doing a better job of catching what that is and refraining from passing it along as gospel truth. But also pass along our biases and our sources and things like that. Like I'll say, I'm on the eternal security side, but I grew up Baptist, so that's my bias, or something like that, to get people to know where I'm coming from.
I think that kind of goes back to the validity of the source. If you're talking to someone that you've known for years and years, they know your heart, they know where you're coming from. And if you end up passing along something that's not true, but you thought it was, I don't think that they would believe that as a lie. And, and I just think because you're the type of person who would be careful and you don't hold things really strong and fast, that people who know you would not consider that lying. But somebody that was antagonistic would probably call you one a liar, whether they really believed it or not, just because you were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a big difference there. Like I think you can just discern whether or not somebody has the intent to deceive or whether they don't.
Yep.
But the intent, the problem for me then though is at some point, like if you're calling yourself a pastor, and my temptation is to say, you know what, he's got a good heart, and he's not doing it intentionally, but at the same time he's deceiving people, and who's the deceiver? And when you consider the fact that the deceiver is also mentioned as being subtle, that kind of hints at kind of what everybody complains about what's going on with the church and the decline, and they want to look to all these other things of compromise and all these other these things that are obvious essentially, but they're in the conservative churches, the ones that have the Bible at the pulpit and read for 2 minutes out of it and say that they're doing, they're giving you the Bible, but they're deceiving. And so I think that's just as big a part of the decline as the obvious stuff.
So when I went to the University of Mobile, there were a lot of young men there who were being convinced into Calvinism, like on the fly, right? Those people, those young men who were not very epistemically astute, or they were epistemically inept, let's say, due to immaturity and just the fact that you're young and all, they're very impressionable. They are learning Calvinism and then very rapidly turning around and passing it along. I knew those guys, and they were basically good people, and they were my friends, and I hung out with them. We listened to some of the same music and that kind of stuff. So I get that, and so those people at that stage and at that level, I would not regard as a deceiver, like they had the intent, like they are willing to lie. They are just repeating something that they don't know any better. They think it's true. But if somebody is a professional, like somebody, and I'll just name names, is somebody like James White or R.C. Sproul, that's wickedness. I mean, that's absolute wickedness to engage in such sophistry when you should darn well know better. You know, when you're, so I think you can ascertain that somebody is not giving you the truth while not also, you know, I wouldn't regard them as evil for the untruth that they told me as far as their intent is concerned until a certain point. when they demonstrate their ideological possession and that they've stopped exploring that kind of stuff, it's yeah. Somebody said there's error, then there's lying.
Can I get us in the weeds a little bit more on this before we move on?
Yes, I want to get in the weeds so bad.
So, yeah. So we can semantically try and look at what it means to lie in a unidimensional way, where there's truth, and then there's untruth, and then there's lying is the intentionality to purport untruth in some way. And then we're getting into, okay, well, there's some kind of deception going on here.
So in intent, malice, or ineptitude?
What do you mean?
So that's so you're talking about intent. So somebody is giving you an untruth. They're either doing so because they're epistemically inept or because they have the intent to lie, like with malice and forethought.
Right. So that's kind of that's kind of the semantic parameters we're giving to lying. And that seems to be, you know, just like what the definition of the word is. There has to be some kind of intentionality, but I just can't help from thinking or sensing that it's more complex than that. It's not that unidimensional is what I want to say. And like, so for example, what if you're a self-deceived person? So you're already operating on within a structure that's already deceived, and then you have the ability through language or through communication to propagate your own experience, but it's already deceived. So intentionality is kind of unimportant. You see what I'm saying? So once the information comes out of you, because it's already deceived, there's already a malintent just implicit in the deception, the deceived state of being.
Yeah,
there's already a malicious intent there.
Are you talking?
Yeah.
So my mind went to deceived and being deceived. Are you talking about somebody who is deceived and thinks they're telling the truth, or I might need to hear what you said again.
So right. So think of somebody who's self-deceived, which is pretty much everybody on the planet to some degree.
To some degree, yeah.
In some way. And so implicit inside of the deception is a malintent. I really don't want to say it this way, but a satanic spirit, like a John 8 kind of, he's the father of lies kind of thing, already implicit within the deception.
Mm-hmm.
And when that is getting represented or out of that agent in some way, it's lying. The intentionality doesn't have to. Okay, let me try and make this a little more simple.
So the intentionality can precede any particular carrier of that message.
Okay, right. So to say it a little more simply, the intentionality doesn't need to just be a surface level thing. It can be it can be several layers down into the psychology of the person or the experience of the person. You see
So-
what I'm saying?
But are you assuming that they don't know they're deceived, or they do know they're deceived? And if they know they're deceived,
That's not deception. It's
No.
Exactly. So really, all the deceived person can do is lie.
Yeah, I have a thought on that.
Sounded.
Is
Oh, yeah.
So that's where I'm trying to
Can
get
you
into the
hear me?
weeds a little bit.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
oh, okay. I wasn't sure. Well, by the way, tell me if I'm rehashing something you've already covered, because I had to step away for a phone call for a minute or two. But if they are intentionally, okay, if they're deceived by themselves, if they're self-deceived, then the problem with them is not lying. But I think there's another problem. They need to, like, maybe study or watch your videos on how to interpret the scripture. You know, they need to think. And I was in the and you know, to respond like Einstein. You know, I believe Einstein advocated questioning even things that most people would take as given. You know, he came up with a lot of ideas that were at variance with what a lot of people took as beyond question. You know, but so I think there's another problem than lying with somebody who's self-deceived. They need to really think more and question more, and that's it.
So, yeah, I think when we're dealing with just an average person on the street, to assess what they are doing is one thing, but I think that each one of us could make the determined decision to very intentionally refrain from saying things that aren't epistemically sound, and from passing along information with an appropriate margin of confidence. And when we do, like, well, I think this, but I heard it from here, and you'd have to make up your own mind, something like that. Okay. So I think we could do that. For someone, I think there's a book, I should have mentioned this earlier, I guess, but it just popped in my head. There's a book called Radical Honesty, which I highly recommend that people get that and read it, because it really, what I'm trying to do is get us to foreground what we're saying enough to where things don't just come out of our mouth without us realizing how epistemically unwarranted it is. Does that make sense? I want us to have a higher level of awareness of what's going on, so that we don't do that, so that we don't pass along misinformation. But I don't know if everybody else is like this, but I remember, I feel like I'm still discovering bits of ideological possession every day that I feel like I need to shed. But I remember being a pastor, and I would repeat things that I knew weren't epistemically warranted, but I didn't have the vocabulary to raise it to, to put it at that level of resolution. However, there was like a little pit. There was something inside me that felt weak or wrong or not sure or something. Something did not feel good when I would repeat these doctrines and try to impress upon people the need to affirm them when I had questions about them myself that I would not admit out loud. And I just wonder, does anybody else have that? Does nobody else have that? Like, every time James White opens his mouth, does he also have that? Or is his conscience seared with a hot iron? Are they past feeling? You know what I mean? I don't know what other people's experience is, but I know my own experience. When I pass along something that I don't know is true, it doesn't feel good. There's a feeling like I don't like the way it feels. But then when I pass along something that I know is true, I feel stronger. I feel better. But I don't know. if anybody else has that experience.
Can I speak to that for a little bit?
Yeah, I thought you might have something to say about that, since we have
You
similar
said that in your video the other day, and I was trying to comment on there, but sometimes it's hard to make something clear in limited characters. But I made that comment that when I engaged in like propositional promotion, right, where you're essentially trying to get someone to affirm something, which I know you've ran into a lot, where people want you to associate to a base, but doing that in a witnessing thing, I said I felt like I was fighting against the wind, and like in a spiritual way, like if you're associating the spirit with the wind of God, like I feel like I'm doing something that my spirit is resisting me while I'm doing it, and I'm fighting against the truth. Like it was trying to tell me what I was doing was the wrong thing, and I wasn't listening to that. And I know Nick will get this reference. I don't know if anyone else will, but I remember reading Socrates' basic trial, and he says that when he's in trial, he says the internal oracle, right? And he's talking about that conscience, however you want to define that. He's like, it didn't resist me today when I came to die. Like, and I felt that resistance. I felt that resistance in my own conscience that the thing I'm doing is not right. And I fought against it instead of going with it. And as far as the truth thing, or being dishonest, I'm doing a series right now at my church, and I talked about this. Y'all did a video on Philippians 4, verse 8, I think. And I hope I didn't mess this up, but you and Nick did a video a little while back, and I used that piece of scripture to lay out like a hierarchy of saying, if I can be true, then I can be honest. And if I can be honest, then I can be just. I can have good discernment. And if I can have discernment, then I can be pure. I can purify myself. I can edify myself. And then once I get to that point, like what we all were talking about, I can see something lovely. I can get to this point where I'm visually able to appreciate what God has put in front of me, and I'm not blinded by my own self-deception. Because I feel like you, Kevin, I've gone through that period where I'm not really worried about someone tricking me anymore. I'm worried about tricking myself.
Yes.
More than anything, really.
That's the goal of cognitive science, is to discover the mechanisms of self-deception and figure out how we can stop those, or what we can do to mitigate them.
I think that might be enough time for my first time on here. I think now I told Nick in the comments, I'm like, I'm just trying not to vomit over here.
I know you got more than that. So when you were describing how that felt, like you are doing something that is ostensibly right, but you didn't feel like it's right. So I can't remember if you were with us or not, but when the church that we were at, one time we went out to Beale Street to do some street evangelism. I participated.
Did that make you feel good?
I participated, but I did not feel like what was happening was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But since I was in the church, and since that's what they were doing, I did it. And I didn't do it the way the other people did it.
Yeah.
But
I'd say that you were in a mess in that situation. I went there because of a very beautiful woman I later married, but I think.
Yeah. How's she doing, by the way? How y'all doing?
Very well. Very well. Everyone's doing good. Oh, we got 3 now.
3, mercy alive.
Yeah, I can't believe you're not hearing them, because my beautiful wife has got them locked away in her room, trying to keep them screaming in the background.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I got something to tie in with Joseph saying.
Yeah.
Talking about doing or saying stuff when you didn't feel like it was the truth or the right thing, but you went against it. So I was in this little group. There's only five of us. And one of the guys happened to be like, I guess you could say hyper Pentecostal. So he believes in speaking in tongues and stuff like that. And so one of the guys who was with us is actually a good friend of mine. He happens to have a speech impediment. And the other guy wanted to teach him how to speak in tongues. So he sat him in the middle of the room, and we were praying over him for like 20 minutes. And the whole time it didn't feel right. I'm like, dude, this is really awkward. This does not feel right. Yeah. And then he's like, now say this. And he's like, he already has a speech impediment, and he's trying to say what the guy's saying. And It was just really weird the whole time. I don't think he speaks in tongues to this day anyway. My buddy.
I've been in evangelistic situations too, where even though I believe in the Great Commission and evangelism, that a particular situation or a particular modality that was being employed at the time did not feel right. I don't feel like it's always the right time to close the deal on somebody. I don't want to try to push something. In other words, like I don't have to, if I'm trying to witness to somebody or talk to them, I don't feel like I have to make them a Christian in that conversation. You know, there's maybe a series of things happening. I remember I was in Iraq and I was with a buddy, and we had a big opportunity to talk to somebody about the Lord, and we did so for a while. And I did not push to get the guy converted. And my buddy was asking me later, like, why? That's a golden opportunity. Why didn't you? I'm like, I wasn't feeling it, you know? It's just how it be. Sometimes it be like that. By the way, that dude later wound up getting saved. And he was a Jew. And he was an infantryman. It was Epstein. And he came back to the Chew where me and this other guy were hanging out. And he was all very huggy and very excited. Thank you guys for introducing me to Jesus. And he said a bunch of cuss words while he was doing this, as a good infantryman would. You know, it was great. And then every time that guy saw us, we maintained, you know, a relationship for the rest of the deployment. But it was pretty good. That was an aside, I guess. Other comments
Can
on
I
that?
throw out a thought?
Yeah, Joe.
I have a thought and a question. I'm not sure it's related to what you're referring to. It is related to something we've talked about. It's about what. So it's about the thing you mentioned, Kevin, about at the beginning of the session about people, you know, just not being willing to learn. They think they know everything.
Yeah.
And here's the thought. Does that relate to what Nick mentioned about people being self-deceived? And if they are self-deceived, is it possibly or probably because they have stopped learning, they've closed their eyes to evidence, and that's why? That's a thought and a question.
I would say on the surface, all those things, yes.
So we would characterize that kind of a person as living a lie. You see what I'm saying? So the whole put away lying thing runs down layers of meaning, really. I think that it's not just limited to a semantic sort of parameter of, oh, well, there was an intentionality behind it, of a malicious or malevolent intentionality behind it. If it is an untruth or in some way comes out as like a non-truth or something like that, then somewhere down the line, somewhere down the genealogy or the root of that expression is gonna, like in John 8, like the seed line of the devil kind of thing, it's gonna take its root in some kind of malicious intent, you know, at some cosmic level or something like that.
So when you say put away lying, what you both said just caused me to think of this framing. Is if you were to try to put away something else, maybe you're trying to put away the bugs and rats in your house or something, you have to do something to flush them out. You have to do something to find and get them out. Maybe you know what I mean? So you don't know where they all are. So you have to use some kind of mechanism to kill them or get them out. So any person could presume, let's say that you all of us here, let's say we're all perpetuating some kind of lie, and it all goes back to some Christian in the 6th century who started this thing. You see what I'm saying? So putting away lying, I think, would involve some kind of investigatory process into the things that we are saying, and to analyze and find out, am I repeating something that we've been repeating since the 6th century that I've just never checked? And so I have to find the lie and put it away. So the intent to deceive may be centuries ago, and I am just mindlessly on autopilot, just pushing this thing along without thinking. And so I think the implied task is to bring some awareness and some intentionality and some foregrounding to what it is that we are communicating, and try to pick out the lies, find those lies. Oh, wow, that doesn't feel right. I don't know where that's found in the Bible. I better stop saying that. There's a discovery process. It has to be very intentional.
Right. It turns out that the antidote to the problem, it's like John Vervaeke's notion of reciprocal opening and reciprocal narrowing. Yes. The very same mechanism that leads us to recapitulate the cancer of being, or of the structure of reality, which is lying, is the same mechanism that we use to investigate and propagate the creative principle of truth.
Yeah. So you're basically the same way you would listen to somebody else and ask yourself, are they telling the truth or not? You just start doing that with yourself. What just came out of my mouth? And do I have any business saying that?
Like the Bereans, who searched the scriptures to see if things were so or not, and prove all things, hold fast that which is good.
Yeah.
Check things out.
1 Thessalonians 5. Yeah, prove it. Prove it means to put it to a test. Try it out.
Yeah.
Ruthlessness.
Most Bereans weren't even Christians when they went back to study, were they?
Yeah, they were totally depraved, though.
But when Joseph was talking, it just brought me back to 2 Timothy 3:15, and it said, "And that from a child thou hast known the Holy Scriptures." I don't know what that word known, what that known means, the Holy Scriptures, but it was enough to make a man wise unto salvation through faith. And then there must have been some kind of a growth between that and the next verse, because Scripture is then able for all these other pieces.
Yep.
And I think after hearing Sir Joseph's story, when you're brought up with such an ideology of what truth is, and you have to play that party line because it's all you're taught, you can even push those feelings aside, those negative feelings aside, and almost make them, or blame them on Satan, that those are almost satanic, or they're from the devil. I'm just being, I don't know, instead of actually acknowledging them for what they are. It's safer to blame Satan for the uncertainty I'm feeling and propagating what I've always known to be true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I ask a follow-up question to Ruth? In that, sorry.
Go ahead.
And then Joe should definitely respond, because it was directed to him and I should shut up. So when you said, so I've thought about that verse too, where it says that thou hast known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation. What do you think that I don't want to say level of knowing, as if it's, like confined to one, but what do you think? I would definitely want to know that.
No, I don't know. And it just really hit me now what that word known, the Holy Scriptures, as from a child, he's known. I mean, that's something, because then I was thinking, just as an off the cuff thought, that for the last several months now, I've heard messages on a Sunday morning, and I can tell you before I hear them, knowing the passage, what the party line's going to be, because I know
the
who
party
they're going
line,
to
yep.
use as their commentators to choose what they're going to say.
Exactly
They're
right.
not doing, there is that knowing the Holy Scriptures, whatever that means, I think is a gap. It's not happening. And I think
So
this is
that's such a good point. When you say the party line, that's what I'm thinking, putting away lying. Put away just repeating the party line. That's one of the things that needs to be put away. Anyway, I just want to throw that in there because it was a great little phrase that you had. And I want to stop now so you can continue. Yosef, were you going to say something next? Joseph?
Oh, yeah. I guess like what you're saying. I said this to Nick. Gosh, I don't know how long ago. I don't know if we were talking on the phone or what it was, but I think that lying's a lot deeper than just, is the statement that's being said untrue, which is what we're kind of talked about tonight. But like, I think that people don't realize, the Satan never lies to Eve in the garden. He never tells her a lie at any point.
He gets her to do something wrong. Yeah.
He asked her a question, and then he tells her something that is true, that she isn't going to die, and that her eyes would be open. None of that's good, but he doesn't lie to her, but then he's called the father of lies. So I think that the only time dishonesty is used in the Bible, I believe, is it 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians 4:2, where it talks about handling the word of God. So like the idea that your source of dishonesty is going to come, like it's an outside attack, like what Kevin properly identified and everyone in this group has properly identified, is that some of the greatest threats you have is what's going on internally within Christianity, and that we can set ourselves up on like what I'm a railroad conductor by trade. So I'm just saying, like, I call it track theology, where you have all these given points and you can operate between all these given points, right, that have these substations of good ideas or good works or whatever it might be, achievements, you might say. But outside of that system is where you find God, and that the system can operate completely independent of God, And I think that that's when I say, like, if you're saying the truth and you do any, like a Bible study on it, you're going to find like the source of truth is God, whether it's his word or his enlightenment or his judgments or his statutes. Like, you're kind of really trying to find where is God in this pursuit, and it'll kind of keep you away from a lot of falsehood. And now I'll be quiet. Sorry.
That's great. Nick sent me some links to some guys, a couple videos that I think I watched over the last couple days. And one thing that's very refreshing, I watched a couple more, is that these guys are professing Christians, but they have the freedom and capacity to just say what they think. And when they're talking, there's a couple of them that I watched would probably be boring for most people, but this guy's just sitting there saying what he thinks. And it's so refreshing that I had no doubt in my mind that is what he really thinks. Whereas when I hear somebody giving the party line, I don't even think of them as human. I don't even think that, I mean, they're human, but I don't think that their humanity is what's being expressed when they give a party line. They are just an avatar of something. They're passing that along. Party line, I guess, is a lot shorter than saying gated institutional narrative every time.
I got a follow up to that set of comments there. So, and it's slipping away from me rapidly. So you could imagine somebody speaking, and man, it just slipped right away from me. Oh man, why does this happen to me? All right, yeah, let's just move on. I totally forgot what what it was. It moved away.
So, all right. I don't want to stultify your thinking process. When it comes back to you, let me know. Maybe it'll come back if you rewatch the video at about that time. So, very interestingly, what comes right after lying no more? Very interesting. I'm just sharing the screen here real quick so you can see the verse. Wherefore, putting away lying. If I were to ask you, what is, well, let me do that in a minute. Let us speak every man the truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Neither give place to the devil. Let him that stole steal no more. Now that phrase, be ye angry and sin not. I think we have a tendency, and what I'm saying could be totally off the wall. There's my epistemic humility. We have a tendency when we see the word sin to think of like this overarching any kind of sin, like be angry and don't cuss your wife out, don't throw the chair through the window, or I mean, any kind of sin you can think of, don't slash the tires, whatever it is, it's like this generic sin. One thing I've been doing in my biblical interpretation lately, just to try it out, is when I see the word sin, I wonder if there is a nearby immediate target of reference, that a specific sin that maybe he has in mind. For example, he lists a sin in verse 25. Verse 25 says, put away lying. So that's you're missing the mark if you're lying. Speak every man the truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Be ye angry and sin not. Could it be, and I don't know, I'm just throwing this question out there, could it be that if a person is angry, they have a higher propensity to be involved in deception? And I mean, maybe that's the specific sin that they're involved with.
Yeah.
Maybe they're angry because they're being lied to over and over again.
But yeah, I think anger may make it easier to lie in some cases. I have a thought on that.
Yeah.
It's about the speaking every man truth. Somebody, total stranger, walked up to me one time and just told me that I was ugly. And yeah, I laughed too. I mean, I thought it was funny because I guess I'm so self-deceived. I thought he was mistaken, but no.
No, he wasn't.
Okay. Regardless, even if it is true, who knows? But even if it's true that I am ugly, does he really need to tell me that? Is that what speaking the truth with your neighbor means? And here I see this.
So like the movie Liar Liar, do you say everything you think?
Yeah, it wasn't
movie Liar Liar, Jim Carrey.
I never saw it, but I can guess from what it sounds like.
He basically gets put under a spell to where he has to say whatever it is he thinks is true all the time.
Yeah.
So he winds up being extremely inappropriate on numerous occasions.
I can imagine. Yeah, and saying something like that, even if it was true that I wasn't, it's not particularly edifying or encouraging,
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
So we have guidance on that in verse 29. It says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that may minister grace unto the hearers. So there could be you could technically maybe obey verse 24 or 25, and you're not telling a lie. Maybe you are using truths to hurt somebody. And so then you have additional guidance in verse 29 that says, yeah, but what we're supposed to be doing is edifying, building people up, not destroying them, not tearing them down. And we're supposed to be ministering grace to people, not telling them they're ugly necessarily. And then the corrupt communication, it's interesting. So if whatever we were thinking about verse 25, whatever else putting away lying could be, whatever isn't exactly lying, I don't know, would probably certainly fit into corrupt communication. And that would probably be bad framing, unacknowledged biases. I mean, a lot of the other things that I read off about that, about the lying thing when I read that note.
I've got a comment. Joshications. Philippians chapter 1. Maybe you can go there and tell me if I'm connecting dots that are there or not. But it's the passage I'm looking at starts with Philippians 1, verse 15.
Yeah.
Some indeed preach Christ, even of envy and strife, and some also of goodwill. The one preach Christ of contention. I don't know if that's covering sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds, but the other of love, knowing that I am set for the defense of the gospel. What then, notwithstanding every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, and I therein do rejoice, yea, and will rejoice. And then if you go down to verse 25, real quick. And having this confidence, I know that I shall abide and continue with you all for furtherance and joy of faith. Let me see where I'm at. I had this on my, I want to see if I'm looking at the right thing. I'm sorry, 27. And so it talks about the conversation. Only let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ, that whether I come to see you or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. So when I read that, I'm thinking about, you know, whether or not someone's lying or what their intentions of their will are, if they're, you know, of envy and strife because they oppose the gospel and they oppose Paul, and Paul's rejoicing and saying, you know, gospel of Christ is being preached. And for you guys, I want you to focus on your affairs, standing fast in the faith of the gospel. So it's like this perspectival and participatory knowing where it's like, this is how I want you to be. It's not, I don't want you to worry about these propositional truths and doctrines that just give you in grouping and basically, what's the word for it? Virtue signaling.
Yeah.
I don't want you to focus on just the procedural. I want you to understand the being of it in your conversation. And that's how I see the gospel and our being in one spirit is we're being in the faith. We have the hope of the gospel of peace, put on the full armor of God, feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. It's about our being, how we are, not just what we believe. And then we're done as long as we get people to join us in our propositional beliefs.
So I think that what you're saying happened to me today, or it occurred to me today. Earlier today, I had a few minutes and I was watching a video as a guitar player, and he was, you know, I play guitar, so I'll watch YouTube videos on like tips and techniques and what to play, that kind of thing, you know. So it occurred to me while I'm watching this that I had no idea what this guy believed, and I didn't care. And when I finished watching the video, I had a good deal of confidence that I would be able to play something on the guitar better than I did before. You know, he's like showing a series of chords here, do this, and then try this riff, that kind of thing, you know, just trying to show how to play some different stuff. And so it occurred to me, I didn't care what he believed. But as a result of interacting with him through the interface of that video, I can do something that I couldn't do before, regardless of what we believe. And so I think that feeling to me kind of catches the spirit of what you're saying, that there's a way to be together. We enhance each other. We enhance we provide affordances for each other to transform and do, be, and become better than what we are. And if we to put away, maybe put away lying means put away all this stuff, put away the statement of faith thing altogether. Don't make that the center of normativity for what constitutes the in-group. Make it something else. Make it the way you be together. Another example, somebody said before, I think Jordan Hall used this. He said, if you're in the neighborhood and the neighborhood's flooding, you don't have a big meeting to discuss what everybody believes. You just work together to save the people who are drowning, and you get the boats and you evacuate people out of their houses. You know, you just work together and do what needs to be done at that moment. And so in the middle of a flood or something like that, it's obvious what needs to be done. And so it's easy to work with people who believe different things, and it wouldn't matter. I mean, you'd be right next to a Muslim and a Jehovah's Witness and an atheist, all helping get people out of the houses. You'd all be working together with no problem, I would suspect. And that's, I think that should help us realize that to a degree, what we believe doesn't matter to a degree. And I say that to a degree.
Yeah. How do you define that degree? Like with like ecumenical style denominations where they're just like, oh yeah, we hang out with anybody, Muslims, Catholics, like, and it seems like there's this promotion of it's kind of a reduction of the gospel at that point for me. They're like,
so like, personally,
so there's a balance.
Personally, I'll hang out with anybody under non-faith auspices. You know, like last night we went and played volleyball, and I did so with atheists and God knows what else. Unless atheism is true.
Yeah, so that's not the context that I'm suggesting. Now, the context I'm suggesting is underneath the
right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, something else I said in one of my videos is like well, I'm interested in finding other people who are trying to do what I'm trying to do. And what I'm trying to do is be transformed by the Bible. That's what I'm trying to do. So that's my threshold. So a Muslim wouldn't be trying to do that. Now, would I have a conversation with a Muslim or go to dinner? Sure. You know, would I engage or do any other, play volleyball or play guitar or something? Sure. But would I consider myself to be in fellowship with them as far as we're trying to do the same thing with regard to Jesus Christ? Absolutely not. And I'd be able to be straight up about that.
And here's another thought. If you don't operate under the paradigm of you need a denomination with a statement of faith and a set of propositional beliefs, you kind of get away from being in danger of being that compromising ecumenical style of Christianity where you don't get the opportunity to share what you believe and without compromising. I guess I'm having trouble trying to articulate that.
Yeah, so you could be not dedicated to a particular denomination and also not compromise. Because usually if you become ecumenical, you wind up having to compromise some of the things what you're convicted about.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Interesting. We are at we're at 4:32 right now, and not just the passage of scripture, but the time. I mean 8:32. Why did I say 4:32? Mine isn't thinking straight. I need to take more focus factor. Yeah, those are so. What you're kind of talking about, Josh, is what's typically called ecclesiology and polity, church ecclesiology and ecclesi. So, like, how to as a Christian, what different types of Christians are, should I associate with? So some, like the Independent Baptist crew, we have all these doctrines of separation where there's all kinds of people you can't co-labor with for certain reasons. And I think it's a lot simpler than that as an individual. And it's all based on all these different belief sets, As an individual, I'm trying to be edified by the word of God is somebody else trying to do it. So a Muslim might say, hey, we all worship the same God. Well, maybe you think so, and that's great. But I'm interested in fellowshipping with people who are trying to be edified by this book, not the Quran. If that's not what you're trying to do, we can do something else together, but not that.
What about if, like, you guys are passing out sandwiches and you go with a Muslim and a Mormon, and as they give them the sandwich, one of them saying, Allah bless you, and then the other guy saying, the angel Moroni bless you, and you're saying Jesus bless you. Is that kind of what you're getting at, Josh?
Yeah, I would. Well, I mean, at that point, you've kind of reduced yourself into a specific denominational category, a certain
So
paradigm.
you're talking about when you're passing out sandwiches with those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think that was appropriate, but the way that you're describing it, what I'm saying is that if you get away from these propositional beliefs or holding to a specific denominational paradigm, then you won't have to be in those situations. You'll be free to to move about in any way the Spirit moves you. You're not, but that doesn't mean I would go do that.
I would be careful to share a message platform with somebody that may confuse someone else about the similarity of our messages. I'm trying to think of different people, like some independent Baptists would be against cooperating with any other kind of denomination for any reason at all. But then and then other ones would say, well, if they're trying to do the same thing that you're doing, as long as that is the only message that you're saying and you agree on that, like say you're trying to change a law on, something about morality or abortion or alcohol or I don't know, whatever. If you all agree on that, then you can do that one thing together. And some people say, don't even do that. But it's I guess everybody's got to make the decision what they want to do. But my big thing is I don't want somebody to confuse my message I don't want somebody to think that it's not important for the message that I'm saying to be distinct from the other guy. So I will not share a platform with them. For example, I will not be in the Baptist denomination where there are Calvinists in there, because if I'm walking up on the platform, then somebody else is walking on the platform as a Calvinist. That sends the message to the pew sitter that there's not a big enough distinction in what we're saying to make a difference. And I want to send a very clear message that there is a big enough distinction in what we're saying that there is a huge difference. We do not have the same message. I will not share a platform because I need that distinction to be clear. And I think if you can make that kind of distinction clear, and then fellowship with people who are trying to do what you're trying to do in good faith, and that's where wisdom comes in. There is no hard, fast doctrine of separation you can give anybody. Well, we're out of time. What last comments do we have? I always hate to end these. I feel like it gets cold when it's time to end. I really appreciate everybody with comments, and welcome, Billy. I don't know if we've seen you here.
No, it's my first time.
Yeah, welcome aboard. Glad to have you. And you don't always have to. I know a lot of people don't like to chime in on their first time, but we're glad you're here. Joe did, though. Joe, but we know Joe. Anybody got any last comments to share before we go? And we will do this same bat time, same bat channel next week. And I enjoyed this. Thanks, everybody. Peace out.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.